Alright, so we're going to come to 4.2 first, everyone, so that's tab 4 in your so we'll do the reports first and then we'll come into the commentary, deal with it that way. So the first is, everyone got their tabs, everyone open on the same tab, not the same page but the same tab. Sorry, it's a joke, early in the day, not really, yeah, sorry. I won't try again, so no one laughed, it's fine. Moving on, right. So Jared and Joanne, thank you. So this is on a report around the Renewal request for footpath and lighting improvements in Tuahiwi Township. Thank you.
Thank you. As outlined, so this report is requesting improvements within Tuahiwi Township, as Dan has just outlined. This includes a gritted path along the eastern side of Tuahiwi Road from the Urupā to Bramley's Road, and also request the upgrading of street lighting through the township. The cost estimate for the gritted path is $455,000, and a very rough order cost of the street lighting upgrade would be somewhere between $70,000 to $170,000. Until some work is done looking at the options, having a discussion with main power and also carrying out a detailed design, the cost estimate is still only very high level due to the high level of uncertainty. Funding for the path could come from the walking and cycling budget, which Council makes provision for within the LTP. However, it is recommended that this is prioritised against other walking and cycling projects which have been or are being identified through the walking and cycling plan. There is no budget currently allocated for street lighting upgrades, and I would just note that recommendation C notes that there is no funding allocated in the long-term plan for street lighting renewals within Tuahiwi Township. Should read street lighting upgrades. We do have budget for street light renewals, which is just the actual head itself. What we don't have budget for is upgrades of street lighting in general. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions? I might start those. So how much just remind me how much we're allocating in the walking and cycling budget, please?
It does vary a little bit from year to year depending on where we are within the within the planning and design phase, but averaged across it's normally around 500,000 a year, so 1.5 million across 3 years.
Okay. And
just sorry to help complete that answer. In the coming year, we are taking a pause in terms of that funding, so it is. That funding really kicks in year 2 of the LTP. We currently don't have any decision from the council as to priorities for where that would be spent, and then there needs to be time for design, detailed consultation, and as you'll be well aware from the likes of Paraki Street, these kind of projects do need a fairly long lead-in time, and so hence we didn't want to put money in the first year of the LTP for capital expenditure, when realistically the delivery of these programs takes longer than that.
Yep. So can specific projects like Tuahiwi with that outside, so if it wasn't considered as part of the walking and cycling strategy that the council was minded to include it, would they, if it's specific projects like Tuahiwi, can that attract, like this one, can it attract 51% subsidy?
Yes, I believe it would be a fit for the walking and cycling budget, and I guess it meets the intent of what NZTA were looking for in terms of encouraging walking and cycling activity within urban areas.
And what sort of lead-in time would it need, and which year would be appropriate for it to be considered if it was to be added in?
So we haven't carried out the design and consultation on that, and I do think if we were treating it like any other walking and cycling project, we would allow a year for the design and consultation, and then the second year we would do the physical work.
So 22, 23?
Yes, yep, that would be correct.
And a question was raised at Tuahiwi the other night, but with the works that we're due to do for sewer and other works, that perhaps this might be the right time to consider putting the path in now. Would that be a view is there any synergies in putting the path in now at the same time as that's being considered, or is it if all the roadsides are being dug up, and what cost savings would that achieve if it was considered as part of that?
Yeah, look, and that is a really good question, and I'd just like to acknowledge Denise Hamilton, who's here listening today, and she actually has put that question to us as well. Look, with the in theory, you can get benefits from having work that's happening in the same geographical location tie-in, and we're doing that. We are actually doing that with our stimulus project in this area to an extent. We've included the road safety enhancements in the same contract as the water and sewer works into a Hiwi. But the benefits are not always what you would expect that they are. So in some ways, laying a pipe is a different kind of activity to building a footpath. There would, if they do happen to be in exactly the right location, you can get some marginal savings in terms of reinstatement costs. But there's a couple of things here at play that mean I don't really think that opportunity presents itself. One is we're quite advanced with the water design, and we want to get that out to the market quickly to meet the very tight stimulus time frame. And if we were to try and rush through a footpath design and get that out to the market, we'd be in the position where we're negotiating a variation with the contractor rather than actually going to the market to get a price on it. And it would potentially jeopardise our time frame we've got to deliver those stimulus projects, and those projects are being delivered at breakneck speed, and it would really we just don't think we'd have the capacity to be able to deliver this as well at the same time as that work, and those potential marginal savings would probably be outweighed by all of those other risks.
So assuming it attracts subsidy, the actual cost would be around 200. Our share would be about 220. Is that right? Rough order of play?
Yeah, roughly around there. NZTA subsidies 51%.
Okay, sorry. I think Councillor Ward. Who else grabbed my attention there? Was it you, Councillor Dutton? And Stewart.
Thank you. That was my question, given that we're doing the stormwater and sewer through hopefully this similar area. I was wondering whether we wait till that happens and keep in mind that it might be a flow-on after that is completed as a top-up, and given the time constraints. The other thing that I'd like to ask the question of is that being involved in the lighting projects for North Canterbury on that board or meeting, we haven't got much budget for lighting in the district. That's been pulled back in all areas, I understand. Is that correct? And therefore that might be an issue to bring this forward at this time.
It is correct that there is no budget for allocation to allow for this lighting upgrade. So it would require the council to allocate additional budget to enable it to happen.
Consequently, just to clarify, it's also that there's not budget to upgrade for the likes of Rangiora as well, and Kaipoi is getting some upgrade that's going to be put forward, but there are constraints right throughout the district. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. There is some allocation, but Joanne can go into that.
So there is a allocation within the town centre budgets for High Street upgrading lighting. I understand there's already a small provision within the Kaipoi Town Centre budget, or small earmarked some budget there for some lighting upgrade there. But the full extent of it hasn't really been, I guess, agreed yet through that lighting group. So there's still more work to be able to enable any budgets to be set there.
Councillor Dooney.
Thank you. With the community, Tūhiwi community, are they happy that perhaps knowing at some stage they will get their footpath, or do they want it done now? Or are they prepared to look perhaps year 2 or 3 to have something done when the work level isn't quite so onerous on our team? What is their thoughts on it?
This has been coming up for a number of years in our annual hui with Ngā Tūhuriri. So if I was to reflect the views I've had expressed, they would like to have seen this done yesterday. So that's been a very clear message, and we have not, this is the biggest step we've taken. We've actually now got, because they did request, could we at least see how much it would cost, and we're putting that to you. So this is a big step in the direction, but they've given a very clear signal for a number of years they'd like to see this path in as soon as possible.
Just to test him, just to signal to colleagues, I'm going to test the meeting shortly with a resolution, with a proposed recommendation. So I'll come to you shortly. So I've got Councillor Stewart, Redmond, Atkinson, followed by Barnett. Is that right, Kirsten? Yep.
Just to clarify in your recommendation B, when you talk about the walking and cycling network plan, now I'm on the walking and cycling reference group, and it has not progressed as I expected and others expected it would do in last year. So what is the time frame for this plan if in fact there is support for the recommendation that we tag the proposed path and the path into a Hiwi with this network plan?
Yep, that's a really good question, and I'm pretty sure Don had done a briefing late last year. I think he may have circulated an update to the council. Look, I have to go away and see if I can find that, but I believe that had some updated timing, and it was indicating that it would be later this year that he would be coming back to council with some further information. As you're aware, Mark Barnes has left council. Excuse me. That task has been handed to another staff member, and it is progressing, but we still have to come back with a further update. I will track that down though.
So if we went with this recommendation that the whole thing wait till this network plan, we're probably looking at least a couple of years out if you're looking at getting the plan, then doing design of this path and then implementing. I mean, we're some years away here.
I would have said I would be anticipating that we have a network plan which is fully developed, consulted with council, and we are consulting with the community, and hopefully have that tied up by the end of the year. It does go into the start of early next financial year. I think it will become clear where priorities sit, and I do think there will be a focus on helping provide facilities for areas that don't have them, so that will be an area of focus. So something like Tūhiwi may well rate quite highly.
Okay, so I have Councillor Redmond, Atkinson, then Barnett. Oh, and sorry, Williams, pardon me.
Thank you. A question for either Joanne or Gerard. Good to see you back from holiday, Gerard. How do these proposals fit with equity across the district and levels of service elsewhere? I mean, do we have a policy over the district in terms of footpaths and semi-rural areas or townships, and also lighting?
Yes, we do, and we have a program of new footpaths in a number of our town areas, and Oxford is one of the prime examples where we have local streets that have no footpath. So our district plan does give us guidance in terms of whether there should be a path on both sides of the road for busy streets where it's difficult for people to cross the road. And then there are some streets where we have, and it's acceptable to have a footpath on one side of the road. I think Tuahiwi has got significantly busier over the years, and we're seeing a lot more through traffic movement through Tuahiwi, and that is in part being generated by things like congestion on Southbrook Road. So we are certainly seeing an increased need for further facilities in the likes of Tuahiwi, and I think the request for a gritted path, which is what has come through, is not out of line with what we would see, I guess, or expect in an area like that. It does connect through to the school and the church and the Urapa, so yeah, they are important areas. It does become a judgment call for council as to whether they provide those services. The street lighting itself wouldn't meet any current standards, and again it would have met a standard at the time it was put in, but that was quite some years ago. And we do have streets around urban areas which are the same, so they would have been compliant at the time they were designed, but they don't meet current or modern standards.
Okay, Councillor Redmond. Oh, sorry, pardon me, Councillor Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, I overlooked that you'd answered such a fine question.
I was just interested in the report. It would appear that we're basing this all on amenity value and use value. Is there no budget in the minor safety budget that could contribute to this? I read the health and safety piece here about the benefits of doing this for walkers, and street lighting would be one of those as well. Does this not cross into two different budgets where it's actually minor safety? Because I think you find Tuahiwi over the years has talked about, particularly the school piece, about it being safety issues. So I'm just wondering why we have nothing out of the minor safety budget in here, and this is all new budget, because there must be stuff there that could go to this, a percentage.
Yep, that's a really good question. Our minor safety budget across all categories is $500,000. So that includes minor lighting upgrades, intersection improvements, a small walking and cycling budget of around $50,000. And there's I think roadside hazard removal, which is $100,000 a year. So there's a number of different sub-buckets that fit within the minor safety bucket itself. So the minor lighting upgrades is $30,000 a year. It's a very small budget that is available. We could look to slowly over time use that $30,000 a year to upgrade lighting in Tuahiwi. Probably just the two things that I would flag with that is the streetlights are currently on the power poles, and if main power allow us to put additional streetlights onto other power poles, that may be sufficient, but that requires them to allow us to attach to the infrastructure, which they seem to be less and less or more and more reluctant to do. And if we can't do that, it does mean installing street lighting cables in the ground and putting in streetlight poles. So that's why there's a range in price, budget that I've got for the street lighting.
If we understood my question, there is an element of this that is a health and safety and a safety issue. And that budget, I'm not talking about funding that through that safety budget. I'm talking about there must be a percentage where, you know, pick your figure of $30,000. Overall, this project must have a percentage of safety issues that you could take from the minor safety budget to put towards this.
So NZTA, how they set up their funding criteria is they have a category which is called low cost, low risk, where all of our safety projects come from, and minor improvement, the minor safety bucket is just one of those that sit within that. So these would need to come from those that area. So yes, it would have NZTA funding, but it wouldn't necessarily have to sit within the minor safety bucket, which is a very small portion of the overall low cost, low risk program, if that makes sense. So yes, it would get funding. Yes, it would get funding under a safety banner, but it doesn't have to sit in minor safety.
Okay. Councillor Barnett?
Firstly, question of process. These two issues appear to be quite separate, even though they're connected. Is it possible to take them separately when we actually go to try and move?
Sure. And yes, happy for them to be considered, well,
considered
point by
separately.
point. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. That's wonderful.
Yep.
The second question I've got is when we did the Woody and Beach pathway, the community did the fundraising, PDU did the design, so there was council support but community fundraising. Is it possible that something like that could happen to speed up the actual provision of this if there was some community input into the gridded path to get it going?
I suspect that's something we would need to take back to Renewal and see whether there was interest in doing that.
Sure. And you've mentioned a figure, the Mayor mentioned a figure of 220k with subsidy. Is it not correct that this would not meet the criteria under our current policy for subsidy with NZTA?
Apologies, sorry, which one?
The path, sorry, would not meet the criteria for subsidy at the moment under our current policy.
No, I believe it would fit within the walking and cycling.
But not the footpaths policy, not the standard footpath provision policies for our district.
So NZTA generally don't fund any new footpaths.
Right.
So the funding we have, the 100,000 a year for new footpaths, is purely funded by council. And that is used for the new footpaths that have already been identified around the district.
Yeah. So the figure that you've mentioned here is 455k approximately to actually do the footpath. Is that the correct figure?
Yes, and my assumption is we would be able to do that under the walking and cycling budget,
right,
which is NZTA subsidised and fits within that low cost, low risk category. And I'm sorry, I know it's very confusing.
Got that now, it's a bit confusing.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. And would there be a possibility that the community could get a local contractor to do that cheaper if they were doing it on a community basis, as was done with the Woody and Beach pathway?
Yeah, so I think with the Woody and Beach pathway, I jogged my memory, this was back into Ken Stevenson's time,
yes,
but I think there was a small payment to the contractor and then the rest was council design and supervision costs. So there was obviously an arrangement between the two, which did mean that it was delivered much cheaper.
Great.
Yeah.
And now on the second point of the lighting, which is like a separate report for me, you've put in 3.8 that this does not meet the current lighting standards, which you've noted. How many areas in the district are you aware do not meet the current lighting standards and need upgrading?
Oh, look, I would say we've got lots.
Lots.
Okay. I mean, we had the
Yep.
issue in Oxford where we changed to the LEDs and that made that much more obvious. And I think, from memory, it was around 200,000, 150 to 200,000 to upgrade Oxford to meet current standards, and that was just a selection of streets in Oxford. We would have the same situation here in Rangiora. We have streets that were designed and street lighting installed years ago and they wouldn't meet the current standards either.
Looking at the situation though, a main street of a village, would there be other main streets of small settlements in the district that would have similar lighting standards?
Yes, well, we haven't, to my knowledge, done any lighting upgrade. If you look at the beaches or Ashley, we haven't upgraded lighting in any of those settlements.
Okay. And if the council, on 4.2, you've noted that you'd like to do more investigation to get a proper idea of the cost, considering the main power issue as well. But if the council was of the mind to progress the lighting due to the activity increase, we could put budget into this year's plan, and you could come back if additional was required.
Yes, so that's something for council to consider. We can go away and I guess do some investigation, have a discussion with main power and potentially do a lighting design for a relatively small cost, which would then give more certainty. So I guess that statement was just around we can go away and do some of that work first if that's the preference before the budget's set, but that's a council decision.
If we did the budget now, would that speed up the process of actually getting the lights done?
I don't think so, because we can potentially do that lighting design from within some of our existing maintenance budgets anyway.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify one of the answers to Councillor Barnett's questions around the footpaths? Because my question before was if it was a standalone project, could specific projects like Tuahiwi attract the 51% subsidy? My recollection of your answer was that yes. So what you then just answered before was if it's outside the walking and cycling, then it wouldn't attract subsidy. Can you just clarify that for me, please?
Sorry, my assumption was that it would still sit within the walking and cycling category, because that's what it is. It's a footpath, so it has to sit within that area, within the low cost, low risk.
Right. So if we decided to add extra budget today to make this project happen outside the $500,000 allocation, would that not attract subsidy if it was over and above?
So we would have to go away and talk to NZTA and include that within our bid, so it would still sit within.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, this is.
No, I understand.
The process gets very confusing, but it would still, within our NZTA bid, it would still sit within the low cost, low risk walking and cycling area.
Thank you.
So they categorise all their projects into different buckets, and we have to fit into one of those. Yeah.
Thanks, Joanne. Councillor Williams.
Two questions. With the 51% government subsidy on it, is that unlimited, or would that, if we used a couple of $100,000 out of that, would that affect some other type of footpath or what have you in the area?
So when we put our bid into NZTA, we have to put in the projects that we want to put forward, that we want to do as a district, and then NZTA approve a program of work, and it may be some or all of what we apply for. That what they then approve to us for funding is the cap, so we can't go beyond that unless we apply for and they approve it. Does that make sense?
No, was it a yes or a no?
So was it a yes or a no? So can we just add an additional project? No, we can't. No.
Okay.
Sorry.
And the other question is there another government subsidy looking at coming up for LED lighting replacements?
No, there won't be.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Ward? Sorry.
Just to clarify, not at the 85% that it was. It will remain at the 51%, but not the 85%.
I'm just wondering whether you could do some more homework on it, seems to me, and go to main power to see if the cost would be, if they would look at increasing the lighting on their present poles, given what it's for. If not, at the same time, if we've got the sewer and everything up, then it would it not make sense to put the lines through for
very good
for
question.
poles?
You're getting to that question. Well done. Yeah.
But would it not make sense that when we've got the sewer and the ground up, that we put the infrastructure in for lighting at the same time, a cost for that if main power don't come to the party?
So there's two things with that. We don't want to be putting infrastructure into the ground which we don't require, and we need to have that discussion with main power first and potentially get that lighting design done. So otherwise we would end up in the situation where we are funding something that we don't use. So we wouldn't do that until we had the lighting design confirmed. And I think the risk with this one is getting main power approvals can take quite an amount of time.
Subsequent then, it's going to be quite a while at the timeline of doing this. So we're a year out from completing that, are we?
No, we're just about to award the tender for that piece of construction. So we've lost the opportunity really, and we did talk to all of the utility providers earlier. And I suppose I'll go back to the answer I gave to the footpath. The benefits don't always actually end up being as much as you'd expect that they would be.
Councillor Redmond, you had a further question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wondered if we could ask Jeff if this work was brought forward based on the costings that we know of, with or without the NZTA subsidy, what effect would that have on rate increases?
Don't want to answer for Jeff. It depends how you want to deal with it, because some of our rates are smoothed. So the net additional funding requirement, if it was eligible for subsidies, and 250,000 of a capital project, which would typically be debt funded, it has an impact, but it would be marginal in the roundings of rates over the period of the term. It would be smoothed. You would hardly note it. The rate impact would not be that great per se. It will be double it if there wasn't NZTA funding, right. But it would.
One final question, and then I'm going to move to a recommendation.
Sorry, very confused. 1.6 clearly says it's 455,000 if we get subsidy. So it's, or can you just clarify that rather than 250?
Right, so 1.6 says the estimated cost of constructing the path is 455,000. That's the total cost, okay, including NZTA subsidy and council share.
Okay, is that all clear? Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to test the meeting with a motion, sorry. So that A, we receive the report. B, includes budget of 450,000 for a gritted path in the Tuahiwi Township in 22-23 or 2022-23. C, requests a report for street light upgrade within Tuahiwi Township in time for consideration in next year's annual plan. The current D wording would come out, and the E would become D. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Atkinson. I think this matter's well overdue. We've look, as many hui's as I've been to over the years, it has come up every year. We've worked really well in partnership with our runanga in terms of identifying key projects, and this is one of them that is regularly raised and is raised with me as a priority at all the meetings we go to and in our annual hui's, but also in relation more recently was around speed limits in the village as well. And during that consultation there were significant concerns raised by the school and the preschool around the connections that exists on that side of the road. There was a question before around and a really good question around whether the community would partner and local kāmatua as well. Well, I got a very clear message that they did that last time, because when the current footpath went in, that was actually put in and constructed with the efforts of our local runanga in partnership. So that's how that was constructed. I got the message that there probably isn't the same ability to do that now because of age and other matters, and I don't think that in this day and age we should necessarily expect our community to do that unless they're willing and there's really good partnerships. But I've got that message quite clearly. There's work to be done. The reason I'm saying 22, 23, and in terms of design work, there's work to be done with Pastor Urapa and to work with Marae trustees to work out the appropriate alignments, because there will be, if this goes in, there will be some change in terms of car parking around there, and we just need to make sure that we're clear about that. I hope this project would attract subsidy, and I think this is one, given the speed limit, that we could put a very good case to NZTA for. We'll see how that goes. Some years ago, there is precedent in doing this. We decided that in Oxford there was a range of deficiencies in the township, and we put money in the budget to address those footpath deficiencies, because they were just never going to get up there in terms of the walking and cycling amongst all the other priorities that there were in the district. I think this is one that it's the right time that we consider this matter. In terms of the street lighting, I'd like further work done on that, and as I've recommended in this motion, that it comes back in consideration for next year's annual plan, and we can consider that matter now. But I think the footpath is a matter. It's well documented, it's been well lobbied for, and I think it's time that we consider it, and I would hope that colleagues would agree that it should be included. Councillor Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to echo the Mayor's comments, but I'd also like to add that there are, to my knowledge, no other villages of a short length, if you like, of a main street, we'll call it that for want of better terms, that house a school, an Urapa and a marae. It's not just the residents who live in this area, it is what is attracted to that area. For hui, for unfortunately tangi, or fortunately, whichever way you see that, and also things like the health day that they have at Marae, all of those things. This is a pretty highly used area, and does sit a little differently to some of the other areas in which we have. We do have some rural areas that lack footpath and lighting, but again, they don't have the school right next door, or the school hall. The hall is further down the road, and Urapa are not particularly in those settlements. So this by its very nature, in my view, is a little different to other areas in which sit in our district. Someone may be able to pull one out of the hat that's the same, but I certainly can't think of one that doesn't have adequate lighting and footpaths around it with the same amenity value that's in there. There's also a sports ground beside the school, which is used in the weekends and so on, and in evenings, certainly touch rugby, getting on to the evenings. So I think that this investment is a little overdue. It has been asked for a long time, as long as I can remember, and believe me, with my walking stick, I've been around this table for a wee while, and I, along with the Mayor, don't remember a hui that I've been to where this hasn't been asked for, and we've given on the odd occasion some pretty hairy-fairy answers to yes, we'll look at that. And I think the rubber needs to hit the road at some point. Timing right may not be financially right for us, but timing's right in the fact that we're starting to run out of road, so to speak, and we're running out of excuses, and I think that we need to look at this seriously and get it done. And certainly with the rat running that's happening through Tuahiwi at the moment, that's another thing that's really picked up through there.
Who are the speakers? Councillor Bryan, do you wish to speak as well? Williams?
With regard to the 455, was that purely our money, or were you including NZTA?
Well, from my point of view, I'm hoping that it would attract subsidy, that would rely on our bid. That's how I took Joanne's comments. So,
yeah. Thank you. Just very briefly speaking to it, and after the presentation we had late last year, I did take some time dispense in my professional capacity in Tuahiwi, just of interest in the 80k area of the 5 tickets I issued for went to locals. Sitting in the 50k area just to the south of the school, the biggest issue was parents dropping children off at the preschool or the school, and then accelerating hard heading towards Christchurch in excess of the 50k area. I do support the inclusion of this, and I do like the time gap that you've given it, because I do want it to marry up with Don Young's work, and obviously there's a conversation that he had with Main Power regarding the lights.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, followed by Councillor Blackie. And Doody. Thank you.
Mine was a wee bit of a same question as Councillor Bryan's about the subsidy. The way the motion's put, it's without the subsidy. Would you be quite happy to amend the motion to include the 51% subsidy in that scenario? And
well, I'm happy with it as it's presently worded, because that'll be a further consideration, but I wasn't planning to make it subject to on that.
Yep. And I'm replying to Councillor Atkinson. We've got bus exchange in River Road now with no footpath access to it. It's got the bowling club, the croquet club. We've got dog park. On that side of the road there's no footpath whatsoever going to those amenities. It's similar type scenario. We've got a footpath on one side, not the other side.
Thank you. Councillor Blackie.
Because Robbie covered most of what I was going to say. I'll support this. It's overdue, it's timely. There's no way we can get it done faster than 22-23, because we have to tie it in with the cycle and walkway scheme as has been discussed. So I'm happy to support it.
Councillor Doody.
Thank you. Yes, I'd be happy to support this for that time out there for 22-23 year. It's having walked that area with Mr. Cleary about 3 years ago, it really is most important too. And also talking about Councillor Kirsten spoke about, helping to build it themselves. Well, I've actually built a footpath because we had no other choice but to build it, and man alive, I wouldn't do it again.
Thanks, Councillor Doody. Councillor Barnett.
Just a question, so the figure is 455 in the motion, is that correct, or 220?
Oh, well, I put 450.
450, sorry, I just wanted to clarify. Is this in addition to the current walking and cycling budget that's already there so that other areas don't miss out?
Well,
that's your intention?
It was my intention, but
Yep.
as I said before, I was hopeful that we would attract subsidies, but I'll address that and write a reply.
No, I mean the current budget that's already there, it's in addition to that. Thank you.
Yes.
On that basis, I'm happy to support it. My main concern was that we don't have a very big walking and cycling budget, and to not have actually looked at the whole district and considered the budget we've already allocated for all the other areas, such as everything from River Road to Waikuku Beach has got shocking footpaths, and we have a huge influx of summer visitors, to other areas in our district who may want to be included in that strategy of getting people from A to B, including the important link between Kaiapoi and Woodend, which is really, really important for walking and cycling. I was a Woodend Ashley councillor, and I've heard this come to just about every hui that we've been to. I was actually quite astonished that an area with this high level of activity, with a school, a preschool, a sports ground, an urupa and a marae, the most important cultural destination in our district, didn't have footpaths on both sides of the main road. But I do understand we've been under huge budget constraints with the youthquake and with other things happening, and now it's time to start putting some of those things right. So I'm actually in favour of putting this into the 22-23 year, getting it right, and starting to move forward. I'm hoping that Joanne will put a very good case to NZTA. With the lighting, I'd like to see that done even sooner. So if there was any possibility of expediting that, I would have no hesitation in trying to get a budget into this financial year, but I respect that this financial year is tight, and that it may not be able to be done until the 22-23 year, although I've been assured by Joanne we have the resources to do it in terms of people. It's just a matter of getting the ticks on the board, and it may be something we can look at in the coming year. The lighting is shocking. There's a lot of areas in our district which are quite low in lighting, and I think it is a health and safety issue. I think you need to be able to drive to a place where there's activity and be able to see the road quite clearly, especially for those of us with failing eyesight as we get older. So that's very, very important, and I would have voted. My initial thought was that the path I wasn't sure because I was scared about the impact on the walking and cycling budget for the rest of the district, but I've been reassured that this is an additional sum and we'll support it.
Thank you. Further speakers? Just right of reply briefly. Could I acknowledge Denise here today? Denise has been a long-term advocate for this, including the speed limit. So we're starting to tick a few things off, and it is absolutely timely. Look, I attended the Kamatua meeting towards the end of last year, and one of the requests from both Denise and Auntie Joan is that we actually had a costing put forward. So thanks to Jared and Joanne for providing that, because that's been the basis in which we could actually know what the cost's going to be of something that's been requested for a large number of years. So I think this is a positive way forward. Look, I hope that this will attract subsidy. I really do, and it's our job to put forward the best case, and certainly in the various forums of regional transport and other bodies, I will certainly do what I can to lobby on behalf of our council and our community for it to be included in there. Councillor Barnett made a good point around lighting. If the staff do have the ability and there is time, they can bring that back by way of staff submission through the budget process. So, but I didn't really want to. I know there's a big work program going on with all the other works around water, and I just didn't want to overload the team with that. So, but if you are able to, then that would be welcomed. I think Councillor Atkinson summed it up well. When we've got a school in Urapa and a marae, there are no other community like that in our district, and that's why for me that's an absolute priority, and ask colleagues all to support this motion today. So with that, I'll put the the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Declare that carried. Well done, Denise. All right. Great. We'll look forward to seeing you in a few weeks. Sorry, at our next engagement. Thanks, Denise. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you wish.
Only 3 days.
All right. Let's hope all our debates aren't perhaps that long. So, but that was a good discussion. All right. So our next.
We're going to do 4.6, which is town centres, including car park.
Okay. So that's Simon and Joanne. Is there anyone else? And Simon. That's the report that Jim.
Yep. So we're going to do item 4.6, which is town centres. It's on. Thank you. 152.
Which is tab 8.
Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to be able to present this report to you on behalf of the Town Centre Strategies Implementation Working Group. I'll refer to that group as the working group from this point forward, so as not to have to repeat that name. The report's purpose really is to bring back to the council the good work of that group in trying to determine funding options and recommendations for the 2 town centre plans that have been adopted. That's the Rangiora Town Centre Plan and the Kaiapō Town Centre Plan, which was adopted back in 2018. We have a number of members of the group here today, and in fact Deputy Mayor Atkinson, Councillors Ward and Barnett, and we had our 2 community chairs were also present on that working group, along with a number of staff from the various units and departments. Importantly, this report deals with a couple of major parts of the town centre implementation, one of those being parking, and the other one being about categorisation of all of the projects that sit within those two town centre plans, of which there were about 70 projects. Categorises those and then provides recommendations on those. You'll remember back in July 2019, last year, when the Rangiora Town Centre Plan was adopted, this group was formed, and following that, in August, September and October, the group undertook 3 quite large workshops to try and generate a series of recommendations, and we came up with those initial recommendations at the end of October as to how to fund the implementation of all of these projects. That was then brought to the Council's management team in November, who considered all of those recommendations and funding options against the wider long-term planning exercise and context, and also made some recommendations on how to proceed, and that's what resulted in the categorisation that you see in tables in the table under 4.13, which is categories A, B and C. For the purpose of this long-term plan, the projects in categories A and B have been included into the budget, and the projects in category C have been deferred beyond this 10-year plan. Following that, we briefed Council on this very early in November. Council also asked us to go away and bring back this report, which clearly articulated exactly which units each of these budgets would be held within. So it was noted that whilst it was really important to understand what the cost of implementing these town centre projects are as a whole, it's also important to note where that money sits in units, because there are many projects, and that's what the table in 4.13 tries to deal to. You'll also note in the report there was a significant sum of the town centre funding which is allocated to Rangiora Town Centre parking, and section 4 details some of the rationale behind that. Whilst I'm here, I'm happy to open any more comments to my fellow town centre working group members, that being the councillors around the table today who may wish to add any other comments, but then absolutely happy to take any questions councillors might have about this report.
Thanks, Simon. Joan, did you wish to add something?
Thank you, Simon. And Simon, being part of the working group, I have to say that the work that's been done, I was very, very pleased that you listened to our concerns about capital expenditure and programs, and that what we could afford, what we couldn't afford, particularly with the parking issues, car parking issues, and what the resolution that you came up with was very economical, and delaying the car parking building till right at the end, which I thought was very, very responsible, but at the same time it was increasing, purchasing some land, but increasing the car parking facilities in the Rangiora town. And I thought you did that really, really well, and I congratulate you on that. And I'm very pleased to see that you covered off on everything that we wanted to do with the least cost in the meantime while we were getting through these big CapEx years and leaving it till the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Atkinson.
Yeah, look, it's just really around what Simon was saying about the costs that are in here, and that everyone understands where they sit within budgets. We spent a lot of time trying to, because it was going to be very confusing. Simon was going to give us a whole heap of numbers in a department that doesn't have a budget, and then they were going to be in the plan as well. So I just want to reiterate its call that you actually understand where these amounts of money are within the certain budgets and where they sit, because if you don't, then it really is worth going into where and why they sit there, as opposed to in what would appear to be a separate budget but would double up on a budget, if that makes sense. So if you don't quite understand that 4.1 particularly, which I think is explained well, but then I've been involved in it since the start. So, but if you don't, please ask the questions so that it can be explained where they sit, because they are in other people's budgets and may look a little strange to some people.
Councillor Williams?
Yeah, just a question
sorry,
on...
Paul, were you part of the working party?
Pardon?
You're part of the working party?
Hi.
No, it's just if you could just hold. Sorry, I thought you were. Councillor Barnett, did you wish to add? I'll come to you in a minute.
Just a very, very quick add, because I apologise, I wasn't able to make all the meetings. So, and I certainly understand the hard work that the working party's done. But I just wanted to highlight to councillors the number one project I can see in the category A is a review of the local economic development strategy. We are going to face some pretty tough economic times, and we need to make sure we've got our business community on board and that we are supporting and working on strategies that's going to actually develop our economic activity in this district over the next 10 years. And the 2012 strategy is well due to be redone, and especially at this time, I actually think it's the time you need to spend money on economic development strategy and on promotion.
Do any other staff wish to add anything? Simon?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, we've taken a program approach here very consciously. These are two significant town centre plans. They span a wide range of activities. Part of the reason for the program approach is to get within the organisation, but also with the interested community that you just highlighted, Councillor, a sense of there is a wider commitment to implement a program of activities over the long haul to give confidence, as distinct to keeping all of these in separate budgets and considering them project by project. And we tend to lose ourselves and lose our audience if we don't have an overall project approach. But at the same time, just to reassure you, we've only counted the costs once.
It's good to hear. Jim?
Yeah, look, and just adding to the comments, there's a significant provision for a car park building in outer years. And at this moment, it's sitting as a placeholder. There are always conversations occurring, and one is sort of underway at the moment with a property owner about their intentions and how that could relate to our plan. So I probably want to highlight that at a point in time, if those opportunities crystallise, and it looks like it is something worth considering, it could come back to the council, which may see that provision shift in the 10-year space, but at the moment it's there. We want to, this is a consultation item in our consultation document that I'm not sure if it's uploaded yet to Diligent, but is coming, which, and there's really a couple of the alternate options are to provide for it as we have, to bring it forward, or to not do it at all. And they are the options that would sit in our consultation document around this proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. So questions now. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I'm quite concerned a wee bit because land for retail development is getting very, very scarce, particularly in Renewal, and we're looking at a site in Darham Street for $3 million worth of budget. 1/3 of the cost of an actual building, a car parking building, because you've estimated there $9 million. Have we looked at the back of the civic present to actually put a car park building there, and that would be 1/3 of it, and still allow land for the future retail development in Waimakariri, which is going to be needed very, very soon, because we're projected to go up to 76,000 odd people. Are we doing the right thing by using that type of land, or should we be utilising some of the existing land we've got and spending that budget towards progressing and thinking of the future better?
Yeah, yes, great question, and it was something that we looked at quite extensively as to the various options. I think we ended up with 6 scenarios of land that could either be developed that we already owned, or land that we could acquire and develop, or just land that we could acquire for at-grade car parking. The land at Durham Street, we don't propose to buy the whole part of the land. It's a large part of the land, but it would still allow for an element of development, but it secures car parking in what we think is a strategically important location. We did look at the council existing car park as an option. At the time of the development of this plan and the Rangiora Town Centre car parking plan or strategy, we were also working alongside the group that's looking at the civic precinct as a whole, and we looked at some of the initial concepts and plans for that, and there was actually within those plans a small car parking building floated, and it became very evident quite quickly that it wouldn't supply enough car parking to the town centre over and above what it needed to supply for the precinct itself to make that valuable, to make that cost equation work, and B, the way and configuration of the various buildings and land was not particularly great for getting a building on. So we discounted that. It's not to say it couldn't come up as a future option, but in the first instance we discounted that.
I just have a question around the painting of the William Street Bridge. I'm not sure that the budget's adequate for that, so that's the first part of the question. Secondly, we have asked for other options to be explored around the William Street Bridge, including whether you take the pieces in between and you glaze it or do some other treatment. Has that been advanced? Because that was asked for at least, well, certainly not long after we started the term, so it would be 12 months ago. So I'd be interested in your answer there, please.
Yeah, great question. You're quite possibly right that the 50,000 that we've allocated might not be enough. We, in the first instance, didn't increase that sum purely because we were doing some work on the various options on the bridge, including the balustrade work that you mentioned, and also the lighting, the feature lighting of the bridge. So we've put that work together as a parcel. We've had a staff member within our PD, our project delivery unit, doing some work on that, and it's now with our consultant to provide us with some advice on certain aspects of that. The idea would be to then cost out the various options, both balustrade, paint, lighting and the like, bring that back as a report, as a separate report, as a project to the Kaipoi Tuahiwi Community Board, and then of course through to Council as well.
Well, just on the timing of that, I do think it should come to Council. Importantly, it's important to go to KTCB, but it is our bridge, so and it's important that I think the Council's involved in that conversation as well. I'm not saying that KTCB will be important in that exercise, but I would like to see what those costings are before it goes to the board, and that this council's had an opportunity to review those, whether it's by workshop or staff briefing prior to that. Because you're looking at doing this work in 21-22, so we probably need to get that sooner rather than later.
We're reasonably confident we can get a paper to the board or a briefing, to the council in the first instance, reasonably in the next few months, hopefully.
And the adequacy of budget, is that something to be, will you reflect on, and whether the provision needs to change?
Could we aim to confirm that in light of the process that you've just referred to for the deliberations meeting in May?
So staff, you'll bring that back as a staff report?
Is that going to be a doable time frame, guys?
Yep, I believe we can do that.
Further questions? Councillor Higgins?
Just on that, it was my understanding that it was 131,000 sitting somewhere in the maintenance budget for painting the bridge now. This is an extra 50,000. There should, because I mean we must have depreciation. I mean it's 12 years ago that bridge was painted, if not longer. Where's the 130,000 for the cost of that sitting? It must be sitting somewhere. It was 131,000. I remember the figure distinctly.
Yeah, I honestly don't know where that figure came from. I can have a look, but I don't know right now. And so,
so are we saying we've got an asset in the middle of the town which we need to maintain, that needs to be painted every so often, that we don't have any budget for, and it's been there since 1961?
We have bridge maintenance budget, yes, and we have an annual budget for that one. It doesn't sit within a bucket that is just William Street Bridge painting.
So just staff have said they're going to bring that back by way of staff submission, but there will be a briefing. When will the briefing be, likely?
We're looking to make decisions about what to include in the LTP. That needs to be done in May, but in advance of that we need to have brought back to you, verified some of the is what's in the budget or not. There won't be a separate budget for this particular bridge, but what capacity might there be? What are the options? Enable you to have that discussion, do a round of discussion with the board about options that you would think would be you might want to be funding through the LTP, and then confirm that in May.
Okay, we'll leave you to work the timetable out. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Further questions? So, Councillor Atkinson's happy to move the recommendations. Is that right? It's contained in the order paper, seconded by Councillor Ward. Councillor Atkinson.
Just very quickly, I hope you'll support this. It's the consultation bit that's really the important bit next. The detail will come out over time and as needed, and I think the type of question that we've already had, which was around what Councillor Williams was suggesting, will continue to happen, because it's a bit of a moving feast until such time as we can actually put some things on the ground. But certainly the numbers with redesigning of car parks made a huge difference, oddly enough, to the capacity of parking within the town. So those sorts of things, and I mean, no doubt that will come back to you as a full briefing in the next tranche of things, but it's very important that this is included so that we can actually do some consultation and get out there and find out what people think.
Councillor Ward.
Yes, I'm happy to support this. It's been a really worthwhile working group, and lots of decisions to look at, and the expansion, particularly of both Rangiora and Kapoi, moving out there's lots to do, and it's good that we have a strategy now that we've got somewhere to go. So well done, and look forward to working with you again.
I can support the recommendation. I think staff have done a very good job working with the working party to identify the key projects as indicated in 4.13. So well done, team. That's a really good program there of activity, and they're the ones that I get asked about all the time. The reason I asked about the William Street Bridge is I'm forever asked about it. Whenever I go across it, someone will stop me and say, when are you going to paint it? What are you doing? So it is important that we do get a decision one way or the other about what our plan is, but to inform that, we do need that work, so that can come to us sooner rather than later, because the Kapoi Town Centre is looking great, and that's the last part of it that's needing to be resolved. But you know, I constantly get really great remarks from people that are really impressed with how it's looking in Rangiora. It's one of the regular remarks that people coming out here to have the shopping experience, they like the look and feel of our town. So all these projects, including parking, are really important that we do have a plan there for addressing all the matters that are raised in there. So great job, and look forward to hearing feedback on the program. Any further speakers? Do you wish to speak again? I'll allow it, Councillor Ward.
No, it's
Do you want to use can you turn your microphone on, please?
I have been involved in a lot of these workshops with the town centres and and also the lighting, and we have got a lighting consultant, and I'm very excited about the plans he has for Kapoi and the bridge. I've seen some initial drawings and design features, and I think Kapoi is going to look stunning.
Thank you. Further speakers? Rather reply, Councillor Atkins. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. Thanks, team. Right, we now move to the roading activity budget papers in the folders. Jared and Joanne, do you have any commentary you'd like to raise in here?
Thank you. So just in terms of this current...
Oh, so it's page 14, everyone. Well, from page 13 on, but if we exclude the cover page, it's page 14. Thank you.
Thank you. I won't go through every item because I know this is quite a detailed summary and there's a lot of information in there. I would just note that it does align with the briefing that was provided to Council on budgets in December last year. In terms of operations and renewals, one of the main changes that we have this year is the bridge maintenance and structures component renewal budget. The bridge maintenance budget has been reduced to just the general maintenance activities, and we have this year applied for funding under structures component renewal, which is some of the more major work which needs to be done to our bridges. We have a catch-up over the first 3 years in terms of budget, so a slightly higher budget provision, and that is to address a number of issues which we have been identified with our structures. Capital improvements. So for this, we have really allowed for improvements around the district with a focus on our key transport corridors and areas where we have known safety issues. Skew Bridge, I will pull that out as one that we have included in our bid to the RLTP, the Regional Land Transport Programme. However, I will note that due to the low BCR, so we are unlikely to get funding for this project. Because of the low crash history at the site and the low number of deaths and serious injuries, this does not result in a high BCA, and we are competing against other projects around the district that have a much higher crash rate. Unfortunately, that's the way the calculation works. It looks at historic data, not predicted. We are going to be doing some more work though on crash predictions along the corridor. We do have some remaining budget this year to try and build a stronger business case, and then we could potentially look at resubmitting in the next 3 years. In the interim, we have allowed for some active warning signage at the bridge, again just to try and keep people safe in the interim. We have we do have left Skew Bridge within the 10 years of the LTP. We have design in year 8 and have allowed for construction in year 9 and 10 of the LTP. So if we were able to build a stronger business case, then Council could consider timing. The other one that I will point out is the new Eastern Rangiora Arterial Road. That is, we're suggesting it is brought forward from 2035-36. Sorry, brought forward to 2035-36. So it sits just outside of the 10 years. Previously it had been sitting out at 3940. So we're suggesting that $100,000 of budget be brought into this 10-year LTP to allow for the design and consenting to begin. One additional thing I will point out is an error which Councillor Barnett had identified, which was the car park rates budget. This was showing a budget increase to $34,000 in 21-22, but this was incorrect and it should have been $20,000.
Which page is that, Joanne?
It is on.
It was in the budget, in the papers itself, is it? Sorry, the spreadsheets.
It's in the spreadsheet itself. Yes, it's on page 30, about halfway down.
Okay. Any further?
No, so they're probably the key points, and look, I'm happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Councillor Atkinson?
Skew Bridge. I'm very confused. We're going from 4 million to 7 million to 11 million. Then there's a 330. It seems to be that Skew Bridge is mentioned in just about every second line of your budget. So how much is the project? And forget the subsidy because that only confuses the conversation. So we'll assume there are no subsidies for anything. what is the budget for Skew Bridge? Because there's 330 for this. There's another item there for different signs. There's the new bridge. So it's very confusing about what we're spending on Skew Bridge.
So the estimated cost is 11 million. So that's from a cost estimate that a consultant provided for us. And the 330,000, which is a separate line item in the budget, is for the active warning signs at the bridge. So that's a safety improvement to help with safety in the interim until we can get to the point where we can replace the bridge.
Safety signs
just to be clear, the 11 million's in today's dollars.
Yeah.
When you get it escalated out there, it sits in our sheets cumulatively at about 13. So,
okay.
And in our sheets here, it's
yeah.
5.5, and then 7.5. So about 13 million is the cumulative.
So it's
total
about
there.
okay.
Yeah, so that's inflation adjusted.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Jim. I'm just interested in the signs. I assume we're looking at these flashing signs that say slow down or there's danger or whatever. My understanding of those that are at like Pine Acres and those types of things, are we talking about something different? Because my understanding is they were 40 grand and we've got 330 in here for that, and if indeed it's 330 as opposed to 40 that we've already got existing, why are we looking at such an extensive? Is that not just signs? Is that other stuff? What is that?
It would be other measures with those signs to help reinforce that slower speed environment. We haven't done the detailed design yet, and once we got to the point of working through and scoping that and designing it up, we'd be able to refine that budget further. That is a budget that we've used some NZTA guidance to help us set, but I agree it may well come in lower.
You've had questions? So I've got Councillor Stewart, Ward, Blakey, myself, and Barnett. Okay, all right. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. The budget for structures component renewal or bridges, I'm not quite sure, but the Dudley Creek balustrades, the whole length of Dudley Creek, where those deep green powder coated railings were put in some 26 years ago. I know because I did a story about it at the time. They have not been touched since then, and they're really flaking all off, and they look appalling. And it was one of the highlights of that whole $1 million upgrade of Dudley Creek. Is that in your structures component renewal 375, or where? Because where does that come?
I believe they would be a drainage asset. And we can have a look as to whether there's been any allocation of funding for any maintenance on those, and you are quite correct about the state of them. And they are what I'll do is I'll try and get you an answer before we get to the drainage commentary today.
Okay, and if you want some nice pictures of them, I've got some because I did quite extensive features about it. A second question, can you tell me on page 29 where there is a series of professional fees for capital works, remetalling, pavement rehabilitation, drainage renewals, and chip sealing? Why would we have signs renewal? Why do we have professional fees in these, which I understand, well, are in-house or contracted out, like they come under our roading contract or our drainage, whatever. They are set functions that are either done in-house. So why is there an extra for professional fees, which is quite substantial when you add them all up? So why is there remetalling $20,000 in professional fees on what is a contract work? So why is there professional fees added
The professional fees is for my staff time. I have a team of 9 in total. For 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those guys are out and about on a daily basis, looking at rural unsealed roads, looking at reseals, and that is the fees that cover their staff costs.
So they get shown like this because as part of the subsidised, there's a little thing which is not well known, is
Well
we
understood,
actually
you were going to say.
we have this for roading activity. There's like a little professional services team that need to be established, and the costs allocated against projects to gain their acceptance by NZTA for funding. So this might have sat somewhere else under staff costs operations,
Yes,
but
well,
they get tagged. So this is Ian Kennedy or the like out there saying, okay, you need to metal this road. Yes, you've done it. So that's his time out there looking at those types of things, which get allocated as part of this cost, which then makes it eligible for NZTA subsidy.
Haven't we got that under our asset management plans that, for instance, road metalling, we've got enough data in there that X roads need metalling at various intervals. Why would it require...
So this is not professional, professional fees might be a stretch of the imagination, but it is staff cost associated with overseeing the delivery of that program of work is probably more correctly describes what it is.
Thank you. The other thing, I did want to, you talked about Skew Bridge having a low BCR. I just wondered what it was and what is the cut-off point for NZTA?
The higher the BCR you can get, the better. Ours is
what
we've cut.
Under 1, forget about it. Over 1.
And it's exactly that. And
So
ours is currently 0.54.
And that because there was an accident on it late last year or close to it, is that 0.54 taking into account that?
Sandra, it's very hard to hear you.
Oh,
Could you speak
sorry.
closer?
Indeed, sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
It was BCR for Skew Bridge.
Yeah. The BCR we've currently got has been calculated using all the crash histories that we're aware of. The issue in terms of the NZTA, how the criteria that we have to assess gives higher rating to serious injuries and fatalities. And a lot of the crashes that we've had there, although they've been they've ended up with cars rolling off the road or losing control. We don't have the serious injuries or fatalities to drive that BCR up.
Okay. Thank you. And the last one, the bridge balustrade that is over the Kaikanui is associated with the cycleway. That large piece of cyclone netting. With my focus on a utility as an artwork, I thought we had really excelled ourselves there. Is that temporary? Does it better be temporary?
You're referring to the new cycle path up Main North Road?
Into Kaiapoi on the southern side, as it goes across Kaikanui. It's had the painted wooden stuff. One's gone now, and now we have a soccer goal-like structure of cyclone netting. And seriously, councillors,
sorry, the question, it's not debated.
Is that permanent? Is that the permanent balustrade for this entranceway to South Kaiapoi?
I will have to follow up with my team and find out.
Okay, so no further questions. So Councillor Ward, yes? No further question for Councillor Stewart. I was sorry, just checking there was no. So Councillor Ward.
Thank you.
You wish to ask a question?
Would it be a good idea with this Skew Bridge application to include a walking cycling as part of it? Do you think that might get it across the line a little bit better? That's number one. Number two is that Southbrook improvements, in there's 5 million in the next 10 years towards that 1 million for lights, and there's 2 lots of 2 million. I would argue that would it be possible to put that 4 million...
Question, please.
Yes. Would it be possible to put that 4 million towards the eastern Rangiora Arterial Road, which could be brought forward, which I think is really, really important to stop the...
So I think you've asked your question now.
Yes, but I just want to say that would be NZTA funding.
Joan,
supported.
It's really important that we keep it to questions in fairness to everyone.
All right,
yep.
thank you.
Okay, you've asked your question. Thank you.
So firstly, in terms of Skew Bridge walking and cycling, I think the reality is it's safety that's probably going to be the thing that gets that across the line. We are having those discussions with our consultant, and they have gone to get some more technical input into and expertise into what the best way is to try and actually build this business case to get it across the line. So that is work that we're doing at the moment. The walking and cycling, I think the key thing to that is we need to have our strategy, our network plan finished, and that will provide that evidence that yes, this is a route that we want to develop. So yeah, it definitely adds another tick to the box, but on its own probably not enough. In terms of the Southbrook, so what we have in the budgets is 2 million for the intersection of Coronation Street for signalising that intersection.
I thought that was 1 million.
No.
And then there were further 2 million.
Sorry, let me just quickly find the correct page.
It's in the summary, it's on page 15. It's got 1.8 million for Southbrook towards Coronation Street.
So 1.8, that's correct.
And then Southbrook Futures at 2 million.
Yeah. So we had 2 million within the 10 years, and then we had a further 2 million outside of the 10 years. And that was really acknowledging that there was some work needed to be done to look at what the options were for Southbrook Road and potentially improving the capacity. And that if we were to look to do that work, we would need to potentially do things like widen the bridge at Pick and Save at the Southbrook, because that's one of the constraints at the moment to putting more lanes in through there. So that was the thinking behind that. The estimated cost for the Eastern Arterial Road is around 2.6 kilometres long, and from memory it had 3 bridges over it. So working up an estimate from what it cost us to build the new Arterial Road, I'm estimating that that's going to be around $21 million.
Of which it should comply with NZTA funding.
We did not get any NZTA funding at all on the new Arterial Road. That was fully funded by council, and I think it's very unlikely that we would get funding for a new road when it's primarily driven by growth.
Okay. Any other questions here, Councillor Ward? So come to Councillor Blackie.
Thank you. Waimak Bridge maintenance, Joanne. We've got 3 lots coming up in 23, 24, 28. I can't, on page 28, the bridge maintenance figures there. Have you allowed for that? Because the amounts you've got written there in those years going into the LTP don't look enough to get anyone out of bed to fix a major bridge. Are we going to? We're not going to be hit with a. Although we only pay 25% of it, sure. But is that bridge, or is there somewhere else and I've missed it, or is that bridge maintenance figure there enough to cover that Waimak Bridge?
Apologies, the funding for that is included on page 31. We've put them in as specific line items because Christchurch City are applying for the funding and from NZTA for that work.
Sorry, I missed that.
So all that will be is we will just pay NZTA our portion, excluding any NZTA funding. So that's why the figures are.
Sorry, I missed that.
That's okay.
Thank you. Any further questions there, Al? Joan and Al, could you turn your mics off? Thank you. Just a question for me. It follows on from Councillor Ward's questions around Southbrook. And so the Torles Street, Coronation Street improvements, it's this coming year. Is that correct?
What we have done is to ensure there's sufficient time to deliver that project.
Yes.
We have the design in year 1 of the NLT of the long-term plan, 21-22, and construction in 22-23.
Okay, and the Southbrook improvements more broadly are in the 26-27. It's for a study of improvements. With 26,000 vehicle movements, do you think that timing is appropriate, given that there are already outlined some of the projects that could be potentially explored? Do you think that should be brought forward to be considered earlier?
That's a really good question. If we were to bring funding forward, I think it would just be the investigation that could potentially be done. I did have a discussion with one of the traffic signal staff from CTOC the other day about how some quick wins could be made through that area, and that could form part of that. So it's just trying to balance that. There could be some, I guess, initial work done by my team within our current road management budgets.
Could you, so bearing that in mind, do you think that, would you like an element of budget sooner to undertake that work than 26-27, so to undertake that study work?
I'm probably comfortable with looking at whether we can optimise that as an action for my team within current budgets. And then if we felt at the next annual plan that needed to come forward, then we could come back to you at that time.
I wonder if you could reflect on a commentary in what goes out, because I'm sure Rangiora Community Board will submit on this, and I know our community have a great deal of interest. So if we're undertaking that work internally, it would be very helpful to perhaps consider some wording that captures that. Is that okay? Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Thank you, Joanne, for answering all my questions ahead of time as well. Just wanted to tease out a couple of them a little bit further. The footpath renewals going down over the 10-year period. Has NZTA had any conversations with you about the ageing population and the need for better quality footpaths as our population gets older?
So NZTA will only fund, my understanding is fund the poor and very poor footpath renewals, and that is if we've got a footpath that's in an average condition, we need to manage that through maintenance. So ensuring things like tripping hazards are dealt with, cracks in the footpath, if it's a concrete path, are ground out, are done through the maintenance budget as opposed to the renewal. So the renewal is when we have big long stretches. And we have our condition rating, and NZTA are aware, so that gets uploaded into RAM in terms of our asset conditions, and then NZTA are aware of the condition of our footpaths around the district. So it's definitely managing. We don't want to be over investing in replacing footpaths that are in an average condition. There's no need for us to be doing that, and NZTA wouldn't be happy to fund that. So that's definitely a balance. I think over the last year we've had a really big push on our footpaths, and we've spent our footpath maintenance budget to the maximum each year. We are starting to see in the condition rating that we're pulling that back. Actually, we've got less poor and very poor footpaths to replace. So I think if we keep on top of that maintenance side of things, then actually reducing our renewal program is an appropriate move. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And the second question I had was on the construction of Park and Ride in Ravenswood with the budget allocation in 2930. Considering that people drive to a Park and Ride and then get on a bus, is there a danger that will predominantly be used by Huranui residents? And is it possible that we could have a conversation about the locations of that going forward to make sure that there's an equity in the funding of that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. And I think, I guess the thought pattern behind the Park and Ride in Ravenswood is we've got a significantly growing commercial area there. There's a lot of residential properties. There's a path from Pegasus across the roundabout to Ravenswood. There's the shared user path through Ravenswood, so really good connection into Ravenswood. We are finding, like at the new Park and Rides, that things like the bicycle cages are actually getting used really well. So we definitely do get people driving, but we are getting people biking or walking to them as well. So it's trying to capture a number of different, people and users from the different areas, and we would be anticipating that we would get local interest and local people using the facilities. In terms of numbers of Huranui people, I'm not sure. It's not something that we've spoken to them about or done any research on as to whether people, say, from Amberley would want to use them.
It's probably just worth adding, look, we've got Park and Ride facilities in Rangiora and Kaiapoi, and actually to some extent serving the lifestyle areas of Mandeville through the southern Kaiapoi car park area. If you add up the population of Woodend, Pegasus and Tuahiwi, it starts to become a third major centre for the district, and so it's really trying to provide provision for that area for the same kind of level of service that we're providing to the other big towns. And look, you will get people from outside the district who use those, as Christchurch will get that our residents using some of their facilities as well. And I suppose, look, that's potentially a byproduct of the success of it if it does get to be so successful.
But just to challenge those assertions, wouldn't people who live in Pegasus or Woodend area just simply catch the bus to Kaiapoi? I mean, if they are walking, they would not walk to a Park and Ride facility, is that not correct?
I guess it depends where they're going, where their destination is, and if you've got a direct service. In the future, there could be an opportunity for the direct service that currently goes from Kaiapoi to go Woodend, Kaiapoi, and then straight into town. I guess there are lots of options, and there's always the argument that every car that you can actually get off the road helps with congestion. So, hopefully that means someone wins.
Okay, Councillor Williams.
Park and Ride again. We had the original budget to be as a holder sort of thing of $4 million. How much has that been spent so far? How much change have we got left?
Good question. From memory, it was around 2 million, I think, and there was a couple of million that hasn't been spent yet. So that's been pushed out in the plan.
Yeah. So that Ravenswood, would that be part of that 2 million being pushed out as well?
Good question.
Page 33. You've actually got 1.6 on the other bit, and then it goes to 1.863.
So I think the 2 million was kept in the in Kaiapoi and Rangiora, acknowledging that in the future if demand continues to increase, there's likely to be need to increase park and ride services. So the likes of the Keeley's site might need to be extended in the future, or the New World site if we found that one of those was particularly popular, which we're seeing obviously now.
So what I'm getting at so there's no extra budget for Kaipoi or Rangiora that's included.
So that so the $2 million that's split over Kaipoi and Rangiora in years 4 and 5. And the additional budget is the Ravenswood Park and Ride line, which wasn't currently allowed for, but that's out in year 9.
Councillor Doody.
Thank you, Joanne. Just a query. The old historic Waimakariri Gorge Bridge, there's nothing in here. Do we not pay for anything for upgrading that bridge?
Yep, that's a really good question. I have had a discussion with Selwyn District Council on maintenance needs for the bridge. You'll remember about 8 years ago the timber deck was replaced and the structure itself is sound. What we do have and what we do see is the chip seal, because the bridge deck moves as the cars drive over it, the chip seal over time cracks and falls off. And it's looking a bit shabby at the moment. Yeah, so it's due for a reseal. Selwyn are just working with the contractors who are here contracting, and they are looking to reseal that probably within the next 1 to 2 years. Now we would manage that through our bridge maintenance budget, so yeah, that's no problem.
Okay, Councillor Atkinson followed by Councillor Mealings. Councillor Mealings.
Just on page 32 on the community road safety and sustainability projects, I note that first of all, I just wonder what the sustainability projects portion of that budget was. There was 18,000 allocated in the 2021 annual plan, and then it seems to have disappeared. What was it in the first place, and has it been reallocated elsewhere or abandoned?
Sorry, I'm struggling to
32
see.
in diligent, and that makes it, let's see, 29 on page 29 of that budget. These are just too small. It's about the third category down from the top of the page. Yep.
I'll actually have to go away and follow that up. I'm not sure why.
Was that planting, or like,
Yeah.
what was that?
Really
And where
good-
did it go?
Really good question.
Yeah.
The remainder of that budget, the line above the road safety projects, is basically road safety operations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Just at this point, I'm happy to allow any general comments colleagues wish to make. I'd just like to say thanks, Joanne, to you and your team. It's a really big piece of work putting together the roading budget, and for the range of questions you've had, given the level of detail. It's probably our most visible because it's the one we get the most feedback about. We've said many times, we're all amateur rating engineers, and we have many in our district. I get feedback quite regularly. I've also appreciated that you've kept Councillor Williams and myself as respective portfolio holders in this area well briefed, and certainly taken us through where you were planning to head in terms of managing I guess our 10-year program. And as it was said throughout the discussion points, if we can attract funding or support from NZTAs, then we can bring these projects forward at any time, which is important. And I really welcome our new Chief Executive coming on board with his expertise in NZTA. He and I had a conversation the other day around possible strategies that can be looked at. That the fresh set of eyes, given his expertise, he may have some ideas about how we may be able to get some of these up sooner, including Skew Bridge. Obviously, Woodend Bypass is one that we raise all the time. In fact, I was on a Zoom call yesterday with a regional transport, and they reminded me that I sound like a bit of a broken record, because they are projects, if we don't keep mentioning them, they fall out of people's currency. And Southbrook particularly is important as the other projects, but Southbrook particularly has a lot of visibility in that area, and I think it's really important that we keep the investigations up there around the things that may make some improvements there. And Councillor Ward's right around East Rangiora and that. So let's hope we can get that project over the line in time. But I think it's worth. And John and the team are doing the designation work now as well. But I was just talking to Alistair the other day. It's actually, when we're doing our commentary out, it's about the BAU, business as usual, the stuff that we actually are doing. We know we're doing. But sometimes we're just not very good at getting that comms out to remind people that these projects are in train, and it's about continually keeping those at the forefront. I know in the LTP we've got certain requirements, but we actually are doing a lot of good work across the board, and it's just reminding people of that at every opportunity we get. Any other comments generally? Councillor Ward, followed by Councillor Stewart and Barnett.
I just want to reiterate, being part of the long-term plan meetings with you, Dan, and I looked at my notes in September of the wishes and the things we had to do, and what we actually achieved by the end of December was phenomenal. So thank you so much, with all the shovel-ready projects and all the other things and the long-term plan and everything. I think where we've progressed, even since September, is really, really fantastic. Well done.
Councillor Barnett. Oh, sorry, Councillor Stewart, followed by Councillor Barnett.
I wanted to ask a question about the use of the cycle lane across the bridge, waimakariri. I've seen so many people on it, and coming actually, unfortunately, into Kaiapoi and hitting, where the cycleway had stopped over the holiday period, and there was a whole group of them sitting. I thought, oh God. But what has been the use? It looked like it was getting decent use, because I've seen cyclists all the time. Do we have any stats?
We don't have any stats just yet, because the counters, I believe, are still going in on the cycleway. But yeah, as soon as we get that information, I'm happy to share. I drive out the CNC. I counted 15 people, and one of our staff members I met who was coming in the door today had cycled from Parklands, so right. Definitely seeing an increase. Yeah, it's really, really exciting to see.
Good to get the bus patronage too, actually.
Yes, yeah. We'll get some data that we can share with council on that.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, thank you. I'm very, very impressed with the work that Joanne and Jared have done in the roading space. I think you've worked really, really hard to raise some of those standards, particularly on the footpaths, which were a concern in some areas. NZTA, or should we say Wakakotahi, has had to respond to changing government priorities, and I think that's part of their problem, is they've had to juggle from one to the other, and I think we may well have got different responses if there've been different priorities up north. But I do wonder how much they've spent on branding every time they've changed their name, and that could have gone into our roading. That's just tongue-in-cheek a wee bit. The only thing I would like to say is I just want, when we look at a strategic roading budget, look at our priorities first, whether or not that meets NZTA criteria. Look at our priorities first, do it from that lens, and then we've got to look what we can get, because I do think other councils, some of the councils have been more successful at that somehow. They've been a bit more aggressive, they've been a bit more forward. I know we want to build a great relationship, but we have to turn around and say, well, the buck stops here for our people. We want our arterial roads to be drivable. We want to have the right level of service in our district. So I guess what I'm saying is don't be afraid to challenge the fact that we have got limitations, but at the same time, I understand the restrictions that you work within. So I really appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you. Councillor Dooney.
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to come back and mention about the cycling between Rangiora and, waimakariri and Christchurch. I actually was in Christchurch recently, and I actually met one of the staff members that took his children for a ride through there. Is that correct, Jared?
Correct.
Excellent. Any other speakers? Councillor Atkinson?
Very quickly on the park and ride that Councillor Barnett mentioned, I just, while I actually have great sympathy with that, people using cross boundaries, if you like, but we need to be very careful. I remember the Cranford Street conversation. If we did not supply, then we had the cross-boundary arguments. I know that there are people coming from Kaianga and using the Kaiapoi one. However, they are the very people that are shopping in the supermarkets in Kaiapoi, so there are added benefits and minuses. So while I don't oppose a bit of an investigation to see how many people are doing that with some statistics, I'm pretty scared of a cross-boundary charge, because it works sort of both ways, and I know Christchurch would dearly love to have that argument.
All right, I don't think there's any other speakers. So look, thank you, Jared and Joanne. That's the riding budget complete. So we'll now break for lunch. That's in the green room. If everyone could be back here at 1:15, that would be really good. Thank you, team.